Dynasty Fantasy Football is similar to your regular fantasy football league, but the difference is going to be that you are going to be holding on to your players through the end of time. Yes, there are guys that I drafted back in 2015 in rookie drafts, such as Amari Cooper, that I've had on my fantasy team for almost the past decade. And that's what makes it so beautiful. And you can actually go through, think long-term. You can build around rookies. You can go to win now. And we're going to cover exactly everything you need to know from a Dynasty Fantasy Football lens in this video. First thing is, when you actually join a Dynasty League, I would say the sooner the better. Now, there are a couple different time periods where I would recommend not starting a Dynasty League. And that's going to be essentially weeks 1 through about week 16 of the NFL season. During that point, you have so many different moving variables. You don't necessarily know if you want to start a league in week 4, then have the rest of the season play out. It's just a headache. I would recommend you wait until the off season. Of course, you can start during the NFL playoffs. I myself will probably join a league or two during the playoff stretch in late January. The second thing I want to talk about is how you join a Dynasty League. The most preferred way is if you have 9, 10, 11 buddies that you know in real life, maybe from college, maybe from work, that you can go through and you can get a Dynasty League going together with people in real life. That's the number one thing that you can aim to do from a fantasy football perspective. But the reality is, Dynasty is for diehards. You're probably not going to be able to find 11 buddies that are willing to sign up for that. So instead, you can look to join a league online. I would recommend either going to Twitter, which honestly may not be the best spot. We have our Discord chat, which you can find a link of in the description. You can go behind a paywall if you are a member of flockfantasy.com, or you can just join the general chat and try to fill a league that way, or find a league that way on Discord. But if you are joining a league with random people that are just meeting you through the internet, there are going to be a couple of random things that we need to talk about, exactly how you keep yourself safe in that scenario. Now, I do want to talk about the platform that you're going to be playing on. So I used to play back in 2014, 2015, 2016, exclusively on myfantasyleague.com. That was essentially where everybody played Dynasty Fantasy Football, but it is a super outdated site where if you're not used to it, it's very difficult to navigate. It's not intuitive at all. And it's $60 per year per league. You actually have to pay dues. So I would recommend you probably don't do myfantasyleague.com anymore. I've moved all my leagues off the platform. There's another platform that people used to play on called Flea Flicker, but Flea Flicker is very old and outdated, very similar to myfantasyleague.com. It's just like a worse version of that site. The only difference is it's free. Of course, you can play on ESPN, you can play on Yahoo, but the issue is there you're having to go through and you're having to carry your teams manually season to season, and it's a pain in the butt if you're a commissioner, and it does kill action in the offseason. So the best place that I would recommend playing would actually be Sleeper. Now, this is not sponsored by Sleeper by any means. They just have the best app for Dynasty Fantasy Football, and that's where I'd recommend that you play. Now, in terms of collecting league dues, obviously, if you have your buddies in real life, I mean, I can make some general recommendations, making sure that everybody pays before the draft, the whole 9 yards, but you can handle that the way that you want to. However, I would go through and really stress this if you're just meeting people online that you want to start a Dynasty League with, because I've made some mistakes. I've done it a bunch of different ways. The first thing is you can go through PayPal. If you have a trusted commissioner, this is what I used to do way long ago. You can pay the commissioner, they can hold the money, and then they can pay out at the end of the season. The issue is, 1, you need to find someone that you can trust. 2, it may not be legal depending on how many Dynasty teams that you're in. I don't know if you want to get in any trouble with the IRS. I would probably not recommend going through PayPal. It's also harder to track. It's harder to hold people accountable as well. And it's a messy situation overall. What I would probably recommend is just going through LeagueSafe. If you go through a site called LeagueSafe, you can make it where everybody pays. It's all very clear. And at the same time, there's a setting where it has to be voted on by at least 6 or 7 league members to actually allocate payouts at the end of the season. This is going to keep the commissioner from taking the money and running or taking the money and spending it. If you don't trust the guy, that would probably be the way that I go. The issue is they do charge fees, so be on the lookout for that. There are ways you can get around fees. I think that if you connect to like a bank account, maybe it's cheaper. I know the most expensive way is obviously if you load it up with a credit card. And I will say as well, if we are looking at dues in particular, you do need to make sure that if anybody's trading their future rookie first or their future rookie second round picks, that you are charging that person for that season. So obviously right now we are all going to be playing in the 2024 offseason, but you can still trade your 2025 first round rookie pick. But if someone trades that 2025 first round rookie pick, I would recommend making them pay their 2025 dues immediately. That's going to keep them in the league, and it's going to keep you meeting a bunch of random people on the internet that trade all their future picks to try to win the first year and then immediately leaving the league because they have a horrible team in the future and it being impossible to fill. Now, speaking of trading for future picks, one thing that I've noticed that is horrendous that I'm seeing more and more as of late is people trading for picks that are 4 years out, that are 5 years out. Now, I've been playing Dynasty Fantasy Football since 2014, and one of these sad truths of Dynasty is there'll be some leagues that you are in that are phenomenal, that you love, and those leagues may last 10 plus years. But a lot of leagues that you join, especially if they're just random people that you met online, those leagues may only last 2 to 3 seasons. It's sad, but it is the reality. And of course, we all strive to have that league that does last longer than 10 years. But if you're trading for a rookie pick that's maybe in 2027, that's in 2028, it makes no sense to allow someone to even give up that pick. Because as soon as someone starts trading away their 2027, their 2028 rookie selections, they are setting up that team to be an absolute dumpster fire with no chance of getting better 5 years from now. And if they need to trade their 2027 first round pick to be a contender, then they shouldn't be a contender in the first place. So I would say I'm only allowing people to trade their first round picks from the season we're in, the following season, and the season after that. So how that would look right now is people that are in my leagues, they can trade their 2024 first round picks, their 2025 rookie picks, and their 2026 rookie picks. But to be able to trade picks in 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, I really would advise against that because it is going to just cause the league in the future to take on a lot of risk. Now let's move over to the startup draft overall. So obviously in your regular fantasy football draft, you're going to join a league. Everybody's going to have 60 seconds on the clock and y'all are all going to sit there on a Friday night and y'all are going to nail that down. But the issue is if you are looking at a dynasty league, instead, you're going to have 40 rounds. You're going to have 50 rounds in some of these startup drafts. So it becomes almost impossible to go through and sit down on a Friday night and do an entire dynasty startup. So what you do instead is you do what's called a slow draft. Everybody is going to have an 8-hour timer. And yes, it's going to make the draft very slow. Sometimes you'll be in a draft that lasts a month or two. And I know that's crazy to say. I know that's crazy to hear. But this actually opens up a few fun things. One, if you're getting into a dynasty league, you probably like fantasy football, probably going to have some fun, and drafting is the most fun thing in fantasy. Two, because that draft takes so long, you actually have a ton of trades that get done throughout the entire startup. If you're sitting there at the 504 and you're on day 2, day 3 of the draft, and you don't want to make that pick, you can go through and you can look to sell it for someone's first round pick the following season and take a rookie that you like maybe in 2025. So it's going to be an 8-hour timer, but that is going to allow for a lot of trades to happen during the draft, which will be a lot of fun. There are a couple different things that I want to talk about as well. One, obviously, you should be playing with the snake draft. Two, I would be avoiding auction drafts for Dynasty. Auction drafts are really fun, and it allows the people who really know what they're doing to go out there and crush. The people who have no idea what they're doing, they're going to flounder, and they're going to create some of the worst Dynasty teams you could ever see. Now, one of my first Dynasty leagues that I had in 2014 was a Dynasty startup. And it was one of my first leagues. And I'll tell you, I bombed it. It was not fun at all. And maybe I just have a bad experience from it. But what I've seen from auction drafts in Dynasty leagues is it really does suck when 3 teams in your league have no shot to ever really contend, regardless of if that's a 2, 3, or 4 year horizon. In a redraft league, it's fine having an auction and having those teams that just completely lose it and get boxed out and have no value, because hell, you can try again next year. In Dynasty, it's not going to work like that. So for long-term league health, I would recommend doing a snake draft. You can do a potential 3rd round reversal if that's something that y'all would like, where essentially you go first round 1 through 12, second round 12 through 1, and then third round also 12 through 1 as well, just because those teams at the very top of the draft obviously have an advantage. Now, one thing that I see a lot that I hate is how people include rookie picks in their startup drafts. So there are a couple different things that you could look to do. The first thing that I've seen people do is just the reverse order from the startup draft. So this is, if you get the first pick in your startup dynasty league, then you get the 12th rookie pick. If you get the 12th pick in your dynasty startup draft, then you also get the first rookie pick as well. This is horrendous. And what this causes is just a complete unbalance of power. And honestly, there's no reason to have it set up like this. It's so simplistic, and it really does not benefit anybody but the person who gets lucky enough to get the rookie pick 101. You do a random order, which I would say is maybe even worse. What I prefer is I prefer going through and putting the picks into the startup draft, where you could go through and you can select a rookie pick with your startup pick. So how this would look is if I was on the clock and say I got the 11th pick in my startup draft, and I was sitting there and I was deciding between Anthony Richardson, I was deciding between CeeDee Lamb, and I was looking at all the rookies, and I went, you know what? There's probably going to be a rookie that I would rather have in 2024. So instead, I'm going to take the 2024 first round rookie pick. Now, you're not able to really do that on Sleeper. You're not really able to do that with most platforms. So instead, what you're going to look to do is you can just grab a kicker. You shouldn't really be playing with kickers in your own dynasty league. So if you draft a kicker, then the commissioner and everybody in that league knows he took the first kicker, so he gets the first rookie pick. There, you can trade that bigger, the whole 9 yards, you know, that's set up. The second thing that you could do is you could also just include the rookies. So you are going to have to wait until Sleeper puts up the rookies into their database. But if you wanted to just go ahead and take Caleb Williams there at the end of the first round, you can go ahead and do that if you want. But those are the two options. You can either draft the rookies or you can draft the rookie picks. Don't just randomly select teams to give them to. Now, looking at some league settings here. Most things that people are going to be deciding between will be a 1 quarterback versus a super flex format. A 1 quarterback league is you start 1 quarterback. A super flex league is where you start 1 quarterback, but you have 1 flex spot that is also allowed to be an additional starting quarterback. So this is going to boost the quarterback's value. This is going to allow guys like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen, like CJ Stroud, these players that actually matter the most in the NFL to matter in fantasy football as well. That is 100% what I would recommend you do in your dynasty league. The second thing that I would recommend that you do is expand your starting lineup. I mean, I cover a lot of redraft. I cover a lot of dynasty. I see all your leagues, and my number one complaint with it is I see a lot of people take their redraft starting lineup, which is you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 1 flex, and start a dynasty league with those exact settings. What I would recommend is you want to have as many starting lineup spots as possible so you actually have more players mattering in your league, where someone like Christian Kirk is going to make a difference on if you can win your league or not, whereas in your shallow format, he'll never make a difference at all. So what I would recommend is at minimum, you start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and at minimum 2 flex spots. I could say you can bring that all the way up to 5 flex spots. I personally play in dynasty leagues that have 11 to 12 starters, not including defensive options or kickers. I don't play with defense or kicker in my Dynasty League. You can choose to do that if you would like. The other thing that I want to mention is expanding your bench. You should be playing with larger benches in Dynasty than you do in redraft leagues. That way you can hold on to rookies at the very bottom end of your team, such as maybe like Wandale Robinson from 2 years ago. Maybe Josh Downs from this past year. Maybe, I don't know, Michael Mayer. These guys that aren't going to produce early on in their NFL careers, but maybe can develop into something that you like later. You want the expanded bench spots. I would recommend 15 to 25. And then I would also recommend adding on a taxi squad there. What a taxi squad is that's going to be where you can go through and you can place your rookies and or your second year players. It essentially is an expanded spot where if you want to take a shot on someone like Puka Nacua and you want to see if you can hit on that rookie, then you can go ahead and you can throw him there. He doesn't have to take a spot on your active roster. And if he hits, that's great. You can bring him up to your active roster. And if he doesn't, that's cool. You can cut him after his rookie season and someone else can take a shot on him. It's very similar to maybe, say, a practice squad in the NFL. Now, going over to the scoring, there are a couple different things that you could do here. Obviously, PPR, half PPR, non-PPR. I mean, obviously, you already know about that if you play fantasy football. Something else that people do that's very common, and I'd say it's probably the most common format at this point, is going to be tight end premium, where you are getting 1.5 points per reception for the tight end position. Now, you don't have to make it 1.5 points per reception for tight end. Say you decide your league is going to give 0.5 points per reception to all positions, then maybe you only give 1 point per reception to tight ends, but giving them some kind of premium. That way they are more appealing for your flex spots and have more value overall. Another scoring wrinkle that people like to implement will be a point per carry aspect. This is something I had a lot of fun with back in like 2017, that time period, because people didn't really understand how to adjust with their strategy. We were able to exploit some people. It was nice to go out there and win some leagues that were point per carry. Since I've gotten older, I realized I don't really like point per carry. That's going to be where you get maybe a quarter point or a third of a point or maybe 0.15 points for every carry that your player gets. I would probably stray away from that. I know a lot of people now are also going with a tiered PPR where a tight end gets 1.5 points per reception, a wide receiver gets 1 point per reception, and a running back gets 0.5 points per reception. Those are all optional, just something for you to think about. And if you really wanted to make the tight end position matter, another optional thing that you are able to do is you're able to make it where you have to start 2 tight ends. If you make it a league where you have to start 2 tight ends and all of a sudden people are having to roll out Mike Gesicki from a week-to-week perspective, you're going to find quickly that those guys like Sam Laporta, those guys like TJ Hawkinson are all of a sudden going at the very top of Dynasty startup drafts, and that position matters. So it depends. Do you want tight end to matter? Do you want it to just be like a regular fantasy football league? Those are just options that you have. Now, going over to a couple different things that people don't think about immediately until they actually are halfway through their league, but tanking is going to be something that you find in your Dynasty League. There's going to be someone in your league that realizes, oh my gosh, I started off 1-6. I want to make sure that I just get the best rookie pick I can next year. There are obvious ways that they can do this that are inside the rules where they can trade away all their veterans. Say if I'm 1-6 and I go, I want to have the best rookie pick I can next year. I have no shot to win. I can decide, okay, I'm going to trade Christian McCaffrey, and instead I'm going to go get a rookie like Jordan Addison and maybe some future picks. I'm going to sacrifice the production in the short term to get long-term value and make my team worse now. That way, with a worse record, I'm going to get a better rookie pick in next year's draft. That is legal. But what is not going to be legal is you going and moving Christian McCaffrey from your starting lineup down to your bench. If you are all of a sudden playing Tyler Algier over Christian McCaffrey at RB2 just because you want to lose your league, then that will be an issue. You can go through and you can write in your rules exactly how you want to punish tanking. I've seen some people do 1, a warning. 2, you take away maybe a 4th or 5th round rookie pick. 3, if they keep it up, then you raise that price. You take around maybe a 2nd rookie pick. And then if they continue to do it, maybe they have to sacrifice their first rounder, or instead their first rounder goes to the very end. Another thing that you can do is just have max potential points, which is a setting on sleeper, which will essentially disincentivize tanking and people benching their best players. Now, something that nobody ever wants to talk about, but it is a harsh reality, is what happens when people leave your Dynasty League. Because it is going to happen, especially if you are joining a Dynasty League that you just meet a bunch of people online. What I have done for years in my own leagues is if 6 or more people leave, then it's probably a bad league and it's time to shut down. Anybody who paid their dues, they get refunded, of course, and then we shut down the league, and it is very sad. We all go our separate ways. Now, if 2 to 4 people leave, then at that point, you can do what's called a dispersal draft. So for my own leagues that I run, I'll tell you right now, there are probably going to be leagues that I have where 3 people leave this offseason. They don't get their dues in by the Super Bowl, which will be our cutoff. And I'll have a league where we need to fill 3 spots. So what I'll do is I'll go over to the flockfantasy.com Discord. I'll send out a message saying, hey, we have 3 spots open in this league. Here are the players that are going to be available in the dispersal draft. Let me know if you want in. We'll get 3 people who want in, and those 3 people will have a snake draft just between them, between all the assets that were left over with those teams. So say the 3 owners that left, if they left behind one team with Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, another team with Josh Allen and CeeDee Lamb, and then a last team with Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson, then the 3 new owners can go out there and with that player pool, they can draft exactly how they want to build their team against each other. It's an easier way to get people in. It's a way to allow the new owners to have some kind of say in how their team is going to be constructed. It will be a little bit of a pain on my end, the commissioner, where you have to track everything manually, but it is going to be better. And then if obviously only one person leaves your league, then you go out there and you can just post that on Twitter, shoot in the flockfantasy.com Discord, say, hey, this Dynasty team is open. If anybody wants it, let me know, shoot me a DM, and you can fill it that way. Now, the last thing that I want to briefly talk about, if you are brand new to Dynasty Fantasy Football, will be something that we cover all offseason. We talk Dynasty Fantasy Football every single day. So obviously, if you're interested, just make sure you subscribe. We'll go way deeper than this in videos. But how you want to be building your team in your startup draft. There are going to be 3 general ranges I want to talk about. The early rounds are going to be your cornerstone assets. Think, I want young and productive. I want proven studs that are young enough where I don't have to worry about a fall off anytime soon, and they can maybe continue to increase their value. So these are going to be guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, these young productive players today. In the middle rounds, you are really going to go one of 2 ways. You're going to find the value. If that value turns out to be a bunch of old veteran players that are falling and you are getting strong prices on, say if Christian McCaffrey falls further than he should, you're going to go out there and you're going to pick up Christian McCaffrey. But if it's maybe Jordan Addison, then you're going to take Jordan Addison. So you kind of find these players that are either young with upside or old but productive and filling into those 2 buckets. Now, as you go to your later rounds, you're just going to fill the rest of your team around them. So if you decided in the middle rounds to take that path where you were taking those young players with upside for later on, such as maybe Jackson Smith and Jigba, such as maybe Jordan Addison, then in the later rounds, maybe you followed it up by taking some rookies or taking some rookie picks, or maybe a player like Zach Charbonnet or Tajay Spears. Whereas if instead in the middle rounds, you decide to go Tyreek Hill, you decide to go Christian McCaffrey, and you try to win right now, then in your later rounds, maybe you take the veterans that are going to come at a heavy discount because how old they are, such as Keenan Allen or Mike Evans. But I hope this is useful for y'all, ladies and gentlemen, anybody wanting to join a Dynasty League. Like I said, I mean, you can find a Dynasty League, I'm sure, starting up all the time in the flockfantasy.com Discord. We have like the tens of thousands of people there talking Dynasty Fantasy Football every single day. And yeah, I'll be talking Dynasty Fantasy Football every single day on this YouTube channel as well. So if you have not done so already, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and I really hope I get to see you out in a video sometime soon.